No, no, but there are some reform-type moves he's made. They're undeniable.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game, and we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Mike Flannery, who's been really he's the dean of political media. Dean of political media. Mike Flannery is the guy who, when you think of what's going on in politics in Chicago, when you think of the machine, when you think of reform, when you think of the Daley's domination, it's Mike Flannery, right? You're the expert.
Well, I've been doing it for a long time. I'm not sure at what point I became an expert, but I have been doing it for.
Can it really be serious?
I'm in my 39th year.
Look, we're taping this on November 6th. We're approaching the 200th day of Rahm Emanuel being mayor of the city of Chicago. Remember big hoopla during the first 100 days? Rahm brought out the charts, checked everything. You see,
right.
He said he would do 80 things. He's done 79. He's a great guy, right?
My verdict at the 100-day mark is the same as it is at the 200-day mark, that he still hasn't achieved the really hard things that he needs to achieve. We're headed over a budget cliff. We're headed for total financial catastrophe in the city of Chicago if we don't rein in these public employee retirement costs, the pensions, the medical benefits, and it's not just at City Hall, but now Forrest Claypool has outlined the problems at the CTA, and it's the same issue there. It's the same issue across a series of what they call the sister governments. You know, there's all these ridiculous work rules at the CTA where the operator of the Red Line can drive a train from 95th Street all the way up to Skokie, but he has to stop before he goes into the garage, where he takes the train into the building where the repairs are done.
Somebody else has to come out
and then another guy has to take it the last 75 feet. I mean, that's crazy.
And Mike, we almost didn't have Mike here because, you know, he can't work on his birthday. And if it were your birthday today, you wouldn't be here.
I'd be getting 2.5 times my regular pay.
And that's the deal with the CTA, right? If you have your birthday, you get off, right? It's like you're back in grade school and they bring out the cupcakes.
Well, and if you work your birthday, you get 2.5 times the normal rate.
Sounds reasonable to me, I mean, right? You know. So anyway, so that's what has to happen. That kind of reform on pensions, on the city. The same thing is playing out on the state level.
And with the teachers union.
And the teachers union.
Once again, all those, you know.
That's a big loss.
Same issues.
Rahm just lost it, okay? In the first 100 days, he was winning because he was getting these schools voluntarily, quote, unquote.
Well, 13 of the 600.
But it was a good start.
And let's not gainsay there are 4,000 students in those 13 schools,
right.
So good for them.
And they've got the longer
day. But the other 500 plus schools don't.
And so because the Chicago Teachers Union president and her union, they just sued the city and they won, basically.
Well, and
because they had control of the, what is it, the National Education
Board?
The
Illinois Education Labor Control Board. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of
the teachers' unions.
Of the unions and of the NEA, IEA, and the AFT.
So they won there, and Rahm didn't appeal. He just backed off, right?
Well,
because it would have been. Union, she just gave she gave him the back of her hand, and he said, "Okay."
Well, and I understand why he backed off. It would have been a court fight. There would have been another round of bad publicity, and both sides would have dug in. And really, there are only a few weeks left, Jeff, for getting some more schools to sign up. The Christmas break, the holiday break, was really the end of this period for signing up. The teachers would get a bonus if they agreed to start by January, and the school itself got a one-time bonus. So, I mean, we're really at the end of the road here. So now what happens is the real bargaining. This is the real tough stuff that Rahm promised he would do
for next year.
For next year, he has
They're
the
negotiating.
power.
He's negotiating the
with
teachers'
the teachers
contract.
union. The contract expires June 30th of 2012. July 1, the new contract kicks in, and the new state law, Senate Bill 7, that the governor signed into law a few months ago, kicks in. The mayor and the Board of Ed have the power to order teachers to work a longer day. The mayor wants 90 more minutes per day. And he's talked about a longer school year by about 10 extra days, 2 weeks longer school year. However, so the teachers have to do that, but they're able to bargain over money. So, it's going to be a tough negotiation. Maybe the toughest in a generation.
But the thing is, it almost doesn't count. Whether it's 5.5 hours, whether it's 7.5 hours, what you really need to do, Mike, and you know this, you have to shake up the whole system. If you're really a true reformer, as Milton Friedman used to say, you get, what that means is you want to be a radical in the true sense of the word. You want to get to the root of the problem. And is Rahm Emanuel a radical in that sense?
As in radix, the Latin root of radical.
Right.
You know, I tell you, the thing about Rahm is he brings a phenomenal laser beam-like focus, a lot of energy, and you know, and he's a very smart guy, and he has brought in other energetic and smart people around him. Now, they are up against enormous entrenched forces. They're going to need some more help from Springfield, and I'm not sure they're going to get it. But in their
he's got the help. He's got the legislation.
He's got the legislation.
The reform legislation passed by the state of Illinois. If he wants to have more charter schools, he can do it, can't he?
Yes.
That's within his power.
Yes.
Right now, there's about 30,000 students.
But he's going to need more money.
8%.
He's going to need
not
more
for more
money.
charter schools.
No.
Why does he need more money for more charter schools?
He's going to need more money because he's going to have to make that longer school day go. He's going to have to give the teachers something.
My point is, forget the longer school day. Get 30% of your kids in charter schools, and he will have won. He will have dramatically changed education in Chicago. 5.5 good hours in a charter school is much better than 7.5 bad hours in a public school.
Okay, but
in a traditional public school.
Yes,
a charter school is a public school
But
too.
there are some charter schools that don't work very well, and that have had their
more often they work than not.
That's
you can't
correct.
say the same thing about the Chicago public schools. So
Agreed.
why not go there?
Stipulated.
And they'll get better
Okay.
as there's more
They have
competition.
expanded. They have expanded
but
the
Mike,
number of charter schools.
15 years of reform, and we've
Jeff,
got.
one of the untold things about this longer school day fight is that Brizard and the mayor were also offering money to charters who went to a longer day.
Right.
A larger number, I'm not sure what it is, 13 public schools went to, with 4,000 kids, went to a longer school day. More charter schools than the 13 went to a longer day as well. So it's going to take some money.
All right, so the other thing is crime. That was the big issue. 3 big issues for Rahm that he ran on. Education, you know, making the streets safer, and fixing the finances. We've talked about education.
Part of making the streets safer was a promise we all thought we heard him say, I'm going to hire 1,000 cops. I'm going to hire 1,000 more cops. He has said, well, okay, I'm not going to hire them. I'm going to redeploy guys and gals from office jobs and other jobs. Some of them, of course, were already on the street in special units. He's just taken them from the streets they were with on the special units, and he's put them into the precincts. How effective can these guys who've been on this in an office job for 15 years? You think they're really effective when they put them out on the streets? These guys may be weighing in at 250 pounds. They're not quite in shape. They're going to go chasing down the bad guys and then shoot them up. All right. Well, you're asking multiple questions here. Yeah. But can they be effective? The officers who've been doing statistical analysis in some cases, who've been manning desk jobs but dealing with the public in those kinds of things, can they be effective on the street? Absolutely.
Really?
They know how to be cops.
They know how to hold a gun. They know how to shoot. Sometimes you got to shoot, right?
Sometimes you have to shoot, and in some cases maybe they have to go back on the range and get smart.
Mike,
like
is there ever a night when you turn on the news?
Most Chicago cops, most of the time, don't even touch their guns. I mean, effective policing and the kind of model the mayor has had in mind since the 90s, when he was one of the architects of the Bill Clinton, 100,000 neighborhood cops, is walking the beat. Talking to the shop owner, talking to the dudes hanging out on the street corner.
Mike, is there ever a night when you're covering the news at Fox, the 9 o'clock news, and 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock
when we don't have a murder
all the time?
Occasionally.
Yeah, is there ever? It seems like every night the last week, and I haven't done this statistically, there are 2 or 3 people being shot and killed. People walk into convenience stores and they just shoot them, and they hold trial there. And if there's a witness, they just shoot them. If you're walked in, a 14-year-old girl walks in on your burglary, and you're out in the suburbs, just grab the kitchen knife and stab her to death.
Yeah, well,
because you don't want a witness around, and in 10, 15 years, somebody's going to be saying, "Oh, that guy was really innocent. Everybody protested and everybody recanted, and so we'll just let him go." You know that happens, Mike.
Sure.
And so they no longer say he's going to be executed when it's clear he's done this. They're already making the case for the guy who was insane, because no sane guy would do this. I mean, is this any way to run a railroad?
Is the city, is the blood-dimmed tide too overwhelming still? Absolutely, with apologies to William Butler Yeats. But I got to tell you, Jeff, the murder rate here, I remember the days when we had 980 plus murders a year, nearly 1,000 murders in a year. We are way below that. We're down at the rate we saw in the early 60s.
Is that 400 a year now?
It's 400 and change.
Yeah.
It's under 500.
Okay.
And I mean, now that was achieved under Mayor Daley, and that's been done in many other cities.
And Rom's going to bring it down a notch.
Well, we'll see. Let's hope. Let's keep
It's
our
going to be.
fingers
You can
crossed.
walk in Inglewood and you can be safe.
You
can go out to Inglewood and you'll be safe.
I'm not. No, sir. I'm not sure that's going to happen. And I don't. I don't begrudge the officers. I'm not envious of the officers who have to deal with the street level violence in places like Inglewood.
Overall.
It's a nightmare.
Overall.
And the Chicagoans who live there, the law-abiding Chicagoans, the majority of the residents of Inglewood, who have to confront that every day.
Redeployment, more cops, whatever. Overall, it's only 200 days, but give Rahm Emanuel a grade. For the first 200 days, how is he doing? A, B, C, D, F?
Well, maybe we could even break it down. What's his overall average? Well, I'd certainly say a B, maybe even a little better than that. But what has he really achieved?
Well, you just gave him a B. Why did you give him a B if you don't think he's achieved anything?
Well, because he's put in motion.
Okay, it's only 200 days. It's a little early.
He has certainly set a direction.
Okay.
But the tough stuff isn't done yet. And the really tough stuff is the financial stuff, the pension stuff.
Okay, but that was the grade just on the police. We'll get to the financial. On the police, you're giving him a B.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now we'll get to the financial stuff, and that's tough. First 200 days. What do you give him for the first 200 days on fixing or improving the financial situation in the city of Chicago?
Well, it's an incomplete. I don't think
you got to give him a grade. You got to give him a grade. Parents demand it. What is the grade?
He gets an A. He gets an A or an A plus for rhetoric.
What about for actually doing something? What has he set in motion? Far, has he set something in motion?
Well, I mean, he's
he's passed a budget, right?
Yeah, and he tried in the spring session in Springfield, and he is trying in the veto session now to get these pension reforms through. But boy, that's tough. On the financial side as well, you have to look at the casino that he wanted to bring to town. Again, he seems not quite able to work with Governor Quinn on that. And now, whose fault is that?
We're going to have a casino in Chicago. You know that, I know that, and everybody watching this knows that. Don't you agree?
No, I don't know that.
The veto session, which is the second week, is this week, right after we're taping.
I don't know that at all.
You're not going to pass that bill?
You're not going to have a casino in Chicago, Jeff, if you don't have a majority in both chambers in Springfield. You got to get 30 senators who are going to stand up and say, going to punch the green button. And you've got to get 60 members in the House.
They've done it once before the veto. What do they have to do now to either persuade
the governor
not to veto it?
The governor has said that he doesn't want the slot machines at the racetracks.
Okay, so take him out.
And the horsemen.
So take him out.
I'm going to tell you, all right, take him out, and you don't have enough votes to pass the bill. You don't have a casino in Chicago. And the governor has said not just a casino in Chicago, but one up in this neck of the woods, up in Lake County, and then one down in South Suburban Cook, and then one in Rockford, and another one downstate.
You've got to be flexible in politics. You've got to be adept. You have to adapt. Say he's not going to have it. He's a smart guy. What else can he do to improve the economy in Chicago other than bring here a casino? What would you recommend? Say you're advising Rahm.
I'll tell you what. Now that's something I give him an A on. We have repealed the city council has moved to repeal the head tax.
Okay.
That was something that the mayor said was cited by Ford Motor Company. It's one of the great achievements of. He had very little to do with it, frankly, but the automobile industry, which was rescued by the Obama administration, has...
people would debate that, but we're not going to take time out. Just know that there are a lot of people who disagree with that statement, Mike.
Okay, I'm well aware of that, and I think that without the steps that were taken by the administration, I don't think we'd have the plant up there by Winnebago County. I don't think that Chrysler plant up there would still be turning anything out.
Well, maybe, but maybe we'd have a better plant doing something else. But that's a whole other story, okay? But stay on here.
Okay.
What could Mayor
there's
Emanuel
4,000 to 6,000 additional jobs coming to the south side there at Ford Motor, which of course wasn't part of the bailout, but did benefit in other ways from it. And the mayor has also highlighted brain power jobs, these thought
Right.
these
we had
thought-oriented
Idea Week
jobs.
or whatever it was called.
Yeah, and you know, again,
Okay.
for the most part, he doesn't have anything to do with Seton Corp doing new hiring, or with some of these other consultants
he's
doing
gotta-
new
he's
hiring.
gotta keep
But
the-
he's highlighting Chicago's role, and that's useful. Okay. That's good,
right.
and that's part of marketing the city. Now, the problem is, of course, that we continue to see the manufacturing, the small to medium-sized manufacturers out in the neighborhoods, out on the south side, the west side, the northwest side, that sector continues to hollow out. That's frightening, depressing. It's scary. You drive.
And why is that,
drive
Mike?
down some of those industrial
Why
corridors.
is it hollowing out? Why are,
well, you know,
are the businesses leaving, or are they shrinking? What's happening?
in some cases, they're going out of business. Okay. In some cases, they go belly up. In some cases, they get acquired, and the acquirer consolidates production elsewhere.
Are taxes pushing them out, or is regulation putting them out, or
look,
is
the
quality of
income
education for employees? What? What's
all
the
of
problem?
that. All of that. The income tax increase was a huge blow, but far more important, I think, has been just the quality of the workforce. You know, there's a shortage, Jeff, of people, of Chicagoans who are trained to do basic blue-collar jobs, because there's a lot of brain power now that's involved in your typical blue-collar job, and that's why these vocational programs in the Chicago Public School. I mean, I was at a fundraiser last night, ran into a guy who was a graduate in the 60s from the Chicago Vocational High School down there just off the Skyway on the south side where I live. And, you know, he was talking about how when he graduated in the late 60s, some of the classmates didn't even go to graduation. They didn't even finish the last few months of school. They got a job at U.S. Steel at 89th Street, right at 89th and the Lake. And they just went right there because they got a job. What was the point? Without a high school diploma, you could get a job that would allow you to get married and to raise a family and to send kids
Mike,
to college.
we know that those days are over. We can, you know,
but these are all things that we need to do.
Nostalgia, but
these are all things that we need to restore. We need to restore the ability of people to get jobs, Jeff, that allows them to raise a family.
Well, you have to
pay the rent, to pay the mortgage, and to send the kids to college.
You have to give them a quality education through high school. Forget college.
Well,
so it comes back to the
here's
first
something
point.
else I'll give the mayor an A on.
You need charter schools to get the quality of education improved.
He and Ms. Hyman, the gal that he kept at the city colleges, that was appointed originally by Mayor Daley, you know, they have talked about that kind of vocational training. The remediation of the job that the Chicago public high schools aren't doing, you know, letting the city colleges get a piece of that action and try to correct the damage that's been done at the public schools and the high school level. I mean, that again is a huge factor.
Right, and you can't make the Chicago City colleges into a sort of a high school, and they're trying to do remediation. They're trying to get these kids ready for college.
So what do we do? Then we write these kids off? We write off these kids who've come out of the system? We just say that's a lost generation?
You radically change your focus into making sure kids learn how to read, whether they learn how to read when they're in the 12th grade or the 4th grade.
But what does that do for the guy and the gal who's 20 years old right now?
You send them back and you teach them how to read.
And the city colleges
we're not going to make their life any better until they learn how to read.
The city colleges are a place where that can be done.
Well, then do that and make that the goal and make that the way the city colleges
evaluate.
evaluate.
And in the meanwhile, for the ones that are 5 years old, yeah, let's kick the system in the butt and let's get some change there. Now, you know, you talk about turning the whole system upside down. There are some excellent Chicago public schools. There are dozens, maybe I think it's about 20% of the system I once read. It's about 20% of the system that is as good as any of the best suburban schools.
Mainly the non-minority areas, Mike. Let's be candid about it. The numbers I hear is that
minority. Those schools are majority African American and Hispanic.
Not the 20%. You're including a lot of
Walter
primarily
Payton,
white
Whitney
schools.
Young. Is that what you're talking about? Northside College Prep?
They're majority minority.
Those are majority minority. Yes, sir. Yeah. They have far more white kids than there are in the system as a whole, where I think the white population is in the single digits.
Right.
But those schools are majority African American and Hispanic. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and are they middle class African American parents who are sending their kids there, or are they lower income African American?
I haven't done that granular.
I think you'll find it's more of the middle class.
Okay.
It is the black elite who are sending their kids there. It is the Gary Chicos who are sending their kids there. Ask Gary. That's where his kids go. Ask anybody who's in Chicago who are the professionals. Who are the white kids
in there? I suspect many of them are the same. I suspect they're not all.
This is a class phenomenon. It's a socioeconomic. It's not a genetic phenomenon. It's a class phenomenon. If you have a black kid who has middle class parents
so you're saying
who
these
read
schools
and
really
don't do drugs and don't do violence,
so these schools are not good.
No, I'm saying those schools.
These are schools that we don't have to kick in the butt.
Those schools are good, but they don't tell you what to do with the 80% who are facing these problems of parents who don't read to them, who do drugs, who do violence. That's the problem. That's the problem that Chicago has to face. How do they teach these kids how to read with all of those problems instead of give excuses?
All right,
and you get in people.
I'm going to tell you this. The other 80%, those are not. Those parents are not all doing drugs. They're not all violent. The majority of those parents are not.
They're not all.
Those schools, though, face problems with parents who do, and with kids who do. And yeah, that's the part of the system.
My point, whatever it is, those schools for those 80% aren't working. Rahm Emanuel has to say, his goal in the next 4 years is to get good schools that can teach those kids how to read, write, and do math. Nothing else, Mike. Forget all this other BS, okay? We're just going to teach them how to read, write, and do math. They may have to de-emphasize sports, art, and all the things that the unions say are important. They've got to get those fundamentals down, and Rahm Emanuel has to be the guy who's the leader on that.
Well,
and I don't see that happening.
You can
I don't see that happening.
Simplistic bromides, Jeff, but that's
not simplistic. It's the way. It's the way of the world.
First of all, the sports, the basketball and the football, hundreds of those kids. That's how hundreds of Chicago public school kids get to college at all. Is because of the sports.
Well, not hundreds. Some do.
No, hundreds.
Scholarships, you're telling me?
In a system with 400,000 kids,
okay, hundreds out of 400,000 is not enough, Mike.
Okay.
That's good for those hundreds, but that's not enough.
And I'm not going to blow up the sports programs.
I'm not talking about blowing up. I'm just saying emphasize
No, you just
other
said
things.
Stop doing all that.
No, stop emphasizing
and then just doing
that.
math and reading.
Look, the first thing that came out, but the first thing that came out of the teachers union president's mouth when she heard the longer school day, she says, "Oh, we have to have more art. We have to have more PE." I'm not talking about blowing up the PE program. Just don't talk about extending it. Don't put your additional resources into it. Teach these kids how to read. What is it that Rahm Emanuel doesn't understand?
Okay. To teach a kid how to read, especially the boys, you've got to let them run around part of the day. They got to burn off that energy.
Run around. I'm not stopping them from running around.
They can't sit there for 6 or 7 hours and just have the blackboard. They'll go nuts.
I'm not suggesting that. Why do you keep on putting that up? I'm not suggesting. Give them an hour of PE.
Okay,
I understand your hostility. Let's stop talking about it. Let's talk about the reading.
I understand your hostility to Karen Lewis and the teachers union. They certainly.
I love Karen Lewis, and I hope she'll come out here and present her point of view.
They certainly
are fair and balanced here.
They are in some ways part of the problem.
Maybe she'll give me a hug.
They're not the whole problem. And even a stop clock is right twice a day, Jeff. I think I understand what she's saying about the art programs and the PE. There are schools where there is no recess. There are schools where there's no recess.
Okay, so let's put a recess. It's not going to cost us anything.
Saying.
It's not a big deal.
I think that's what she's saying.
No, that's not what she's saying.
Okay.
You heard the Clintons' motto: deny, distract, distort, and delay. That sort of thing.
All right.
That's Karen Lewis's model: deny, delay, distract, and distort. Talk about anything but teaching these kids how to read.
But I just wouldn't go there. I wouldn't delegitimize them. Look, the teachers union, yes, they have approaches that are flawed. They have obstructed progress in many ways. But to say, Jeff, but to say that they're not thinking about the kids, and to say that the ideas like that, to delegitimize everything that the union or Karen Lewis proposes, I think is just wrong-headed. And it's wrong.
Look what they've done, Mike. They've never supported charter schools. They don't support vouchers. They don't support competition. They don't support innovation. So how can you tell me I'm wrong? The day that they step up and support any of those things I've just said, which I know you support,
yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Okay. The day they do that, then I'll agree with you. But I don't see it happening.
Okay. But
we got to go on.
Because they don't support that, then to delegitimize what you said about art and PE, Mike, I think is wrong. Okay, move on.
You're here 28 years at CBS 2 News, right?
30 years at
CBS 2 News.
And I was 7 years prior to 7 years prior to that, I was at the Sun-Times.
Okay, you know the Chicago mainstream media, backwards, forwards. You're
Yeah.
now at Fox, right?
Yeah.
You got a major program. I give you guys credit on Fox for your 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. You got a lot of other news, but in that 1 hour of news, Mike, you're able to do things that 2, 5, and 7 can't because they only have half-hour programs. You know that, right?
That's correct.
Channel 9 can do the same
That's
thing because
correct.
they got an hour. So you really attack on politics. If people want to know about politics and what's going on and government, they're going to be watching 9 at 9 and Fox at 9, right?
Well, that's
They're
correct.
going to be watching Mike Flannery.
I think so.
So you know this stuff, and my point is,
I'm
but
not
you
the
also
only one
know
who
the other
covers these
side.
issues. My colleagues Larry Yellen, Dane Placco,
Right.
Darlene Hill, they do.
Absolutely, and Dane
There's a lot of
Placco's
good
been here.
reporters there.
I mean, yeah, he broke the story about how much this waste has been going on in the security detail for Alderman
Right,
Burke, right?
right.
He
And
broke the story that it's $500,000 a year for like 25 years. You're talking about, I don't know, somehow he comes up with about $11 million, right? Something like that. That's a lot of cash, right? You could teach a lot of kids how to read for that money, right? So why in the world are we continuing to do that? Rahm Emanuel has cut that program down, but he has not eliminated it. And for Daley, he's now left, and we're giving him 2 security guards for the rest of his life because we like Maggie Daley. They can't afford it. He's got like 5 jobs now. Really, he's working at the University of Chicago, he's working at Cat Muchin, he's guest lecturing, probably guest speaking for $50,000 a time, and we need to subsidize the security of Mayor Daley? If he needs security, don't you think he can afford it?
I'm sure he can.
And shouldn't 2, 5, and 7, and 9 and Fox be pounding that home every night until that stops?
Well, I think there are a lot of other things. There's a lot of other lower hanging fruit with a bigger payoff.
But are they doing the job?
Knock that one home every night.
Okay.
I could pick about 100 other things to knock home
Well, here's
every
one.
night.
When Rahm Emanuel says we're not going to have competition, we're not going to bid out our underwriting costs, for issuing bonds and so forth, we're going to negotiate.
Well, kudos to you for pointing that out.
You said that in the last month, and nobody's talking about it.
Right.
You said
That
that's a
one-
major source of
That
pinstripe.
one sailed right over my head. I've
pinstripe
got to go take a
patronage.
look at that. Well, it's the classic pinstripe patronage.
So we're putting Cellini in jail, and we're saying to Mayor Emanuel, you can go ahead and do all this pinstripe, patronage, and we'll just look the other way. Where is the mainstream media? Is it liberal media bias that hits not just on the national level, but hits on the city and state level? I mean, you know these folks. Is there liberal media bias here in the mainstream media?
On the coverage of the pinstripe
Just
patronage
everything.
issue?
Just everything.
I think your typical Chicago.
We're going to continue to speak as the crest roll, and I'll let you finish that.
Okay.
But I really want to thank Mike Flannery, who's a great guy who's come out here under terrible circumstances. He's taping this show on November 6th. We've had to get him here early. Mike, I got to thank you so much.
Okay.
And I hope you'll come back.
Sure.